when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That's how Thomas Jefferson opened the Declaration of Independence, in simple terms. If you're going to break away from a country, then you owe the world an honest explanation of why. And the Founding Fathers established a very powerful case first. They listed 27 specific grievances to King George III and how he had repeatedly abused his power and violated rights and treated the colonists like second-class subjects instead of a free people. So here are those 27 grievances, and here's what they meant in a way that anybody can understand them. King George wouldn't pass laws that were necessary for the good of the people. King George wouldn't let the governors pass laws either. He blocked them from acting on urgent local issues without his approval, and then ignored them. If the colonists wanted laws passed, King George required them to give up their representation. He demanded that the colonists surrender their voice in government just to get basic laws approved. Parliament was only held in England. This was meant to discourage and fatigue the colonists. He forced lawmakers to travel to uncomfortable places just to wear them down. King George dissolved the colonial legislatures. He shut down elected colonial assemblies that opposed him. This dissolution left the colonies in danger with no local government. Colonies were vulnerable to invasion and to chaos, and he refused to let them form a new government. King George restricted immigration to the colonies, and he raised property taxes to make up for it. He blocked new settlers, and he made the land harder to get, which hurt growth. King George obstructed the administration of justice and dissolved the colonial courts. He refused to approve laws that would create proper courts. King George gave himself the full authority to hire, pay, and fire judges. So judges now had to answer to him and him alone, not the law and not the people. New soldiers and swarms of officers were sent by the king to harass the colonists, and he flooded colonies with officials and troops who burdened everyday life. King George kept a standing army at peacetime without the consent of the colonial legislatures, which he had dissolved. He maintained permanent troops among civilians without their approval. Soldiers were held above the law and the justice system. He made the military independent of and superior to civilian authority. King George and his parliament didn't represent the colonists, and he imposed a foreign jurisdiction and laws that the colonists never consented to upon them. Soldiers were quartered on colonial properties. Troops were forced to live in colonial homes. This is why we have the Third Amendment. Mock trials were held for soldiers that were accused of murder. King George protected soldiers from real punishment, like killing the colonists. King George cut off colonial trade from the rest of the world, and he closed the harbor. He destroyed the colony's ability to trade freely. Number 17 is taxation without representation, which is the only one we'd ever heard of, where he opposed taxes without colonial input. He stripped away a trial by jury, and he refused to give a fair trial. King George required colonists accused of a crime to be tried in England, so he forced the people to travel overseas for sham trials. 6 weeks on a boat. King George had been encouraging changes in Canada, Quebec at the time, that could threaten the colonies. He expanded arbitrary rule in neighboring Canada as a model for controlling the colonies. King George abolished the colonial charters. He took away their fundamental governing documents of the colonies. King George and Parliament had been legislating for colonists without their representation. They claimed total power to make laws for colonies in all cases. And this is one that we need to really focus on right now with the donors and the lobbyists who are our leaders serving us or them. King George had abdicated government. He declared them out of his protection and he waged war on them. He abandoned his role and he started open warfare against the colonies. King George had authorized the destruction of lands and towns. He plundered them, he burned down towns, and he ravaged the coastline. King George sent the German Hessians down to hunt and ruthlessly kill the colonists. He imported foreign mercenaries for a total war. The British Navy was practicing piracy on the seas and taking colonists captive at the time. And these colonists were ordered to kill their family and friends or to die. King George had excited domestic insurrection and armed the natives to attack the colonists. He stirred up slave revolts and encouraged frontier attacks by native tribes. So he was having Hessians and Canadians and slaves and native tribes all attack the colonists, as well as the British Navy. Just a nightmare to be living under. So when you look at all 27 grievances together, the pattern is unmistakable. King George was systematically stripping away the colonists' rights to safety and their ability to govern themselves. And at a certain point, the colonists reached their limit and they concluded that independence was the only responsible path forward. These grievances form the factual foundation of their case to the world, demonstrating that separation was not an impulsive act. It was a measured response to sustained tyranny. Even today, these principles, they carry real weight. They serve a timeless warning to pay close attention to overreach of government. And when they erode the representation and they bypass the rule of law and they favor military power over civilian authority, or they impose policy without consent, the founders understood that freedom requires vigilance. That idea lies in the heart of the American founding, and it remains a powerful legacy worth carrying forward and worth remembering today on the 250th anniversary of this great nation. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. God bless you, and stay free.